How's it going, everyone? Here to talk about something that everybody loves, and that's another remaster from Sony. Now, Days Gone is an absolutely beloved game, and I think if you assess it in a vacuum, Days Gone Remastered is something that is exciting to people, giving them another opportunity to go back and play Days Gone again. If you actually had context to the situation, given the lackluster PlayStation first-party output, given the fact that there are a lot of other remasters that people want, and it just seems like we're getting remaster after remaster from Sony and not as much as far as first-party output goes, you could make the debates all day long. However, this is a game that is absolutely beloved, and it does suck that we don't have a Days Gone 2. Could you imagine if 6 years ago, instead of shifting Sony Bend into doing some live service nonsense, that Sony just greenlit Days Gone 2? Guess what? That game would be out this year, or it would be out last year. What do we have instead? Nothing, because that live service game got canceled. But nevertheless, hopefully Days Gone Remastered is supported and it'll save some jobs at Sony Bend Studio, because at this point I don't know what the future of that studio is going to be, and maybe if it does well enough, it'll greenlit Days Gone 2. I will say this, I don't think it should be on the consumer to greenlight Days Gone 2 again with the release of Remastered. Guess what? Days Gone 1 for a new IP sold kind of well. Did it do God of War numbers? Did it do, Last of Us numbers? No, but it did fairly well, and I think they could have built upon it with Days Gone 2. But nevertheless, Days Gone Remastered does have a plethora of updates. I will go over that, details on the speedrun, permadeath modes, and more. Now, one thing to note, that this Days Gone Remastered release will be a $10 upgrade for those of you that already own the game. It will be $50 as a re-release. This is one of those aspects that gets lost in PlayStation doing all of these remasters. It offers them an avenue to kind of appreciate the price point of the game again, because now Days Gone Remastered is what you're going to have to buy, and they can be a little bit more conservative with the discounts. Days Gone used to go on sale for like $14.99, $19.99, or $9.99 even, I believe. It's not going to go on sale that cheap anymore, and if you thought about, hey, I'm a PlayStation Plus subscriber, guess what? That version of Days Gone, you will not be able to upgrade it. You will have to buy the game and get it that way. Same deal with Horizon Zero Dawn, a little bit of a bummer there. The PC version of the game will be getting this content released as a separate DLC, the Broken Roads DLC, but we've got some insight again on the various aspects of the game. Welcome to Days Gone, Bend Studios' open-world adventure survival epic. We reached out to Kevin McAllister, creative and product lead at Bend Studio, for some additional details about the anticipated remaster, including its notable new additions. So grab your survival gear and gas up your bike. The PlayStation 5 will be enhancing Days Gone. Remember that the Days Gone was already 60 frames per second on PS5 and already improved on the PlayStation 5 without this remaster, but the graphical improvements we've made, you'll see a difference. There's increased lighting, increased shadow quality, increased fog depth. For example, nighttime is now darker, the moon is now more natural looking, the blue sky is more natural too. Days Gone is a very realistic looking game, and we've taken that to a new level with the PlayStation 5, and you've got a new and improved photo mode that is being implemented with more lighting options and instant day and night switches for beautiful environmental photography. Gameplay wise, right off the top of my head, is increased horde size. That's very specific to our new gameplay mode, Horde Assault, and these hordes, they get big. Like how big? So for example, the biggest horde in the story mode is the Old Sawmill Horde, which is a mission that has 500 freakers. In Horde Assault, we have hordes that range up to 800 freakers. They cover the screen, that's for sure. As far as crowd control, McAllister also brings up these huge hordes. It felt like the perfect time to ask him deeper about the remaster's new Horde Assault mode. It's our new survival arcade mode, a fresh, unique take on the core Days Gone gameplay loop. We took everything you had in the story mode, built upon that, and took the challenges we released post-launch and evolved that concept. So now you have these big open regions, you're facing a bunch of hordes, and they're coming from different angles on you. You're seeing hordes at totally new locations than what you saw in the story, and the hordes at familiar locations are even bigger. Horde Assault gives you all the tools at your disposal from the start. New players can jump in and play it right away, and they can experience the core open world gameplay of Days Gone, but now you're having the maxed out motorcycle with you as well, and some new weapons too. There's also human enemies alongside evolved freakers like breakers, reachers, and screamers. It's a lot more chaotic, but it's true to the Days Gone gameplay experience. It's a really cool and fun mode, and I think fans are really gonna enjoy it. On top of that, you do have a speedrun mode being being implemented to the game. Speedrun mode is separated from the other modes. When you go into speedrun mode, you can play it on any of the difficulties. There's always an on-screen timer that will pause during cinematics each time you go through it. It records your time next to that difficulty. At the very end of your speedrun, you get a special graphic showing your detailed stats to share. The reason behind this edition, McAllister noted, with Days Gone, there are players that have tried doing speedruns, but it wasn't a big thing. So giving new players who may have not tried the game before a speedrunning mode, maybe that's exactly what they wanted. Now they're able to jump in and have fun and use their expertise to finish the game as quickly as possible. I respect those players because that's something I can't do, and it's really impressive to see. Another major addition, and potentially most intimidating, is the Permadeath mode, which one death and you're out. You can play the Permadeath mode on any difficulty, and there's two settings to choose from. If you choose from the whole game, whenever you die in the story, you have to start from the very beginning. Your save file gets deleted. If you choose per act, so to say, if you die at the old Sawmill Horde again, you only return to the beginning of that act. That's going to save you hours of gameplay in this mode, but for players who want to play the whole game, we salute you. We also think trees are going to be the biggest cause of death in this mode. I may be speaking from experience. You must be more cautious this time around. Scavenge supplies every chance you get and be more methodical with your approach. When you're going through an ambush camp, you want to make sure you're prepared before you leave, because you can run into a horde or a bear. If you don't have the ammo, the run's over. Also, there's an early point in the story where you have to make a decision on which camp to give a stash to. Choose Tucker's camp, you have access to better weapons quicker, which makes a huge difference in the early game. If you do already own the PlayStation 4 copy, again, it will be a $10 upgrade. The $10 upgrade, as far as the new game modes, will include new Horde Assault, Survival Arcade, Permadeath, and Speedrun, and then the PlayStation 5 features include graphical enhancements, full DualSense wireless controller support, new accessibility features, and enhanced photo mode features. And again, there's a lot to talk about, and it's unfortunate that Sony Bend has to face the brunt of, you know, hearing a lot of the aspect of Days Gone Remastered getting crapped on. And look, I'm in that camp. I think Days Gone is a game that doesn't really need a remaster, and the fact is, when you add context to the situation, it's unfortunate that those games that are really sought after to get remasters aren't getting remasters, a la Bloodborne, or the games locked away on the PlayStation 3. However, two things can be true. There can be those remasters that people can want more, and a lot of the issues that I mentioned, it's more of a Sony issue. It's not Sony Bend. I would imagine Sony is the one that pushed Sony Bend into the market and the area of doing a live service game. Sony is the one that didn't seem to have interest in Days Gone 2 back in 2019. It's a lot of Sony misfires, and I have empathy for Bend's studio. They're doing what they can. It's just unfortunate of the situation of that studio. A studio that's incredibly talented, and their talent has been wasted for the last 6 years. That's just the reality of the situation. And look, it'll be nice to go back and play Days Gone if you're interested in that. It's just, I hope for the long-term sake that Sony Bend doesn't end up being a studio that puts out Days Gone Remastered and then they're shut down. I really do hope they get another opportunity. Maybe they can get the team back together to do a Days Gone 2, or give them an opportunity to do a new IP that's in line with Days Gone, because they did great work in the creation of an open world. They have that fundamental knowledge. Now, remember, pre-Days Gone, what did Sony Bend work on? They worked on games like Resistance, Retribution. They worked on games like Uncharted, Golden Abyss. You know, these games that were smaller scale portable titles. Days Gone was their first big budget, a new IP on a AAA scale, and I still thought they did a fairly good job with it. And you look at the reviews of the game, you look at the sales numbers, and you look at, most importantly, fan reception over the years. It just feels like over the years, this is one of those games that has built a cult following, and I wouldn't be too surprised that if Sony, in this course-correcting period that they're in, maybe they'll greenlight a Days Gone 2. Now, I don't believe we see that until deep into the PlayStation 6 life, because if a Days Gone 2 goes into development, it only starts development now. Remember, that other game, the live service nonsense, just got canceled. Days Gone 2 would be in incredibly preliminary stages, and you're talking about a 5-year dev cycle, so 2030, 2031, around that range. But nonetheless, you got Days Gone Remastered, and that will be dropping on April the 25th as a $10 upgrade and released on PC as the Broken Roads DLC. That's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, sound off there. I know whenever we talk about these remasters coming from Sony, again, in a vacuum, they're cool. I like the Horizon Zero Dawn remaster as well. I'm sure I'll appreciate the Days Gone remaster. It's just when you add context, that's when it becomes a little bit more insulting. But nonetheless, your thoughts down below, sound off there, let me know your excitement level. A lot of games coming out at the end of this month with Days Gone Remastered, Forza Horizon 5, Indiana Jones, Claire Obscure Expedition 33, that a remastered release of Days Gone might be one that, you know, hits the bench for a lot of people, but let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Sound off there, thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.